Sri Lanka has a new president, six-time Prime Minister and veteran politician Ranil Wickremesinghe. He replaces Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who fled to Singapore and resigned last week. In a parliamentary vote, Ranil Wickremesinghe got 134 votes. His main rival, Dulos Alaperoma, got 82. In his acceptance speech, Wickremesinghe urged all parties to sink their differences. He asked them to join him in pulling the country out of its worst economic crisis in history.
The
economy of the country today is in a very difficult place. Young men and women are asking for change in the system. There are many problems in the world and we must proceed without getting caught in them. To go forward, we need to come up with a new program. What the people are asking of us is not the old politics. The parliament must unite in the face of these issues.
So who is Ranil Wickremesinghe? For many, he is a political survivor. The veteran politician is the leader of the United National Party, a party that once ruled the island nation. He has run for president twice, once in 1999 and again in 2005. He has been prime minister 6 times, but has never seen out a full term. Many view him as a shrewd political operator who managed to cling on in the parliament despite his party getting only 1 seat in the 2020 election. Wickremesinghe was backed by Rajapaksa's SLPP party. It is still the largest party in the parliament. Wickremesinghe is set to rule till the end of the Rajapaksa term, which is November 2024. Reports suggest he is likely to appoint his schoolmate Dinesh Gunawardena as the prime minister. Gunawardena has been a strong ally of the Rajapaksa clan. While Gotabaya's departure has affected the party, Mahinda Rajapaksa continues to remain in the country, and reports suggest that he asked the SLPP lawmakers to support the veteran leader. Leaders and protesters call Wickremesinghe a proxy of the Rajapaksas, and when our managing editor Palki Sharma Upadhyay spoke to him last month, she asked him the same question. Was he a CEO for the Rajapaksas? This is what the veteran politician had to say then.
Prime Minister Wickremesinghe, are you an independent PM or are you more like a CEO appointed by the Rajapaksas?
I'm not a CEO. I'm a Prime Minister. Prime Minister is never a CEO. A Prime Minister in our system is the one who heads Parliament and who leads the government in Parliament.
This brings us to the question, will he be able to unite the island nation, as he says? The president's deep unpopularity could trigger more unrest. Protesters are already calling for his ouster. There are even fears among some that he will crack down heavily on the protest movement.
I think it's a sad day, though. It's a sad day not just for the people of this country, but for whole of the world, I guess, because it seems that the entire world is sort of accepting this most unethical manner of leadership, because this is someone who did not win an election. He's someone who was rejected by the people's mandate, and then such a how ethical is it for someone like him, let alone lead a government, lead a country, be the head of a state?
So what's next for Sri Lanka as Wickremesinghe inherits the crisis-hit economy? The new leader has already started talks with the International Monetary Fund. Currently, he is banking on bilateral aid to tide over till a bailout is secured. Wickremesinghe says he wants to unveil a new budget for 2022 in August. He wants to sell off the loss-making state enterprises like the national carrier, the Sri Lankan Airlines. The airline has already accumulated debts of more than $2 billion. Currently, his immediate challenges include sourcing fuel supplies and managing public sentiment. And our correspondent Dastani Athoda has been tracking all those developments in Colombo. She sent us this report. Take a look.
Sri Lanka's parliament, in a historical first of its kind today, elected the 8th executive president of Sri Lanka and that being the acting president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, who emerged victorious in the parliamentary polls by securing 134 votes to his name. Now, soon after the announcement was made that Ranil Wickremesinghe is now the 8th executive president of Sri Lanka, fresh protests broke out in the commercial capital of Colombo, demanding for Ranil Wickremesinghe also to step down. Now, majority of the protesters who have carried out protests for months on end demanding the Rajapaksas to step down are of the view that President Ranil Wickremesinghe is also a loyalist of the Rajapaksas and is also partly to blame for Sri Lanka's worsening economic crisis. Nevertheless, all eyes will now be on the Sri Lankan parliament and at how best the newly elected president, who will take oath tomorrow, will be able to secure and garner the support and the confidence of parliamentarians to make and form an all-party government, which is set to take place in the coming weeks here in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's political crisis appears to have some form of solution as of right now. Nevertheless, the bigger picture will always be Sri Lanka's spiraling economic crisis, with much of the population waiting for days on end in fuel queues as the country has been facing its worst fuel shortage to date. Stay with WION as we track Sri Lanka's political as well as economic crisis. Reporting for WION from Colombo, I'm Dasunia Powder.
And we earlier spoke to Dr. Payakisa Shoti Sarvanamoto from Colombo. He is an executive director for the Center for Policy Alternatives.
Well, to the extent that the Rajapaksas still control the SLPP majority in Parliament, which gave Ranil Wickremesinghe 134 votes to become president today, yes, they do control. However, I think Mr. Wickremesinghe did make some promises earlier on, and the Rajapaksas too realize that if we are to get out of this crisis, we have to engage on the pathway to reform. And, for example, Mr. Wickremesinghe promised that he would restore the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which includes checks and balances on the president in the exercise of his executive power. Now, things like that might also reassure the general public that all is not as bad as is made out to be. But he definitely has a problem with political credibility, with ensuring that the mass of the people have trust and confidence in his leadership. I don't think there is a question with regard to his experience and expertise in getting us out of the crisis or negotiating with the IMF, etc. It's the question of political stability, and that comes from them accepting him as a legitimate president. Political stability, in effect, is a sine qua non for any kind of change and any kind of rescue package out of our current crisis.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.